Hi, everybody. Today's Monday, November 24th, 2025, and our dear friend David Pyne is back here with us. Welcome back, David.
Hey, Nima, great to be back with you.
Let me start, David, with the latest news that we've learned from Zelensky that he has confirmed that he'll meet with Donald Trump to discuss the points, the 28 points. It seems that the Ukrainian delegation had a meeting with Americans and Europeans, and Marco Rubio was there, and they have adjusted some of the points. They have what is your take on what's going on right now, and what is the latest news? What's your take on the latest news on the plan, 28-point plan?
Well, first, let me say that President Trump, did a great service in presenting this 28-point peace plan. It was it was last Tuesday. It was leaked, perhaps by Keith Kellogg, who's on his way out. He's reportedly resigning and leaving his post as U.S. Special Envoy to Ukraine in January. It looked like that was maybe a protest resignation because he didn't like the peace plan. I've in my latest article on my Real War Substack at dpyne.substack.com, I surmised that Russia likely would accept 25 of those points. They were just some three key ones that they would reject. But the latest news is that Rubio, essentially yesterday, Ukraine and EU leaders met together and came up with their alternative 28-point peace plan. And that plan was really very much unacceptable to Russia. It really sought to just sabotage and destroy any chances for peace that Trump has been trying to do, not consistently, very inconsistently, actually. Just brief periods of time. The first 3 months, he sought for peace up and from late January into early May, and then he started going to the neocon side, and then at the Anchorage Peace Summit on August 15th. During much of August, he was striving for peace, came up with a deal with Putin whereby Russia would accept a ceasefire in exchange for the transfer of Western Donbass region, rather Donetsk region, back to Russia. And then this latest proposal, was very constructive. It was received very favorably from Russian President Vladimir Putin. But then the latest news is that Rubio and probably his equivalent, Ukrainian foreign minister, have met together and taken out all the points that Zelensky didn't like, and now it's back to the Zelensky plan, just like happened when Trump met with Zelensky in the White House on October 17th and told him that Ukraine was going to lose, and Trump had Russia had a very reasonable peace deal that they were offering that would be very good for Ukraine, and that Zelensky needed to sign it, or else Ukraine was going to be destroyed. And now it's just history keeps repeating itself. This administration is proceeding almost in a bipolar fashion, where they make these great grandiose moves for peace. Trump is all for it. He seems to maybe pressure Zelensky to do something, and then within 3 days or less, he drops everything. There was a deadline until yesterday. Trump had a deadline of Thanksgiving for Zelensky to accept the proposal, or else U.S. aid would be cut off. That was clearly implied both on the U.S. side and in Zelensky's video address, which seemed very sober, in which he said this was a critical time for Ukraine, perhaps the most dangerous that Ukraine had ever experienced, where he was, Ukraine would either have to give up its dignity by accepting the Trump peace plan, or else lose the support of a key partner, which of course was referring to the United States. And now with this 19-point peace plan, essentially what the changes it made is the Donbass isn't going to be given up to Russia anymore. That question is being put off until later. All limits on the size of Ukraine's military, which by my estimates is under 200,000 active duty troops left remaining on the battlefield. In the EU plan, in the Trump plan, it was 600,000, so they could triple the size of their military. In the EU plan, it was quadrupling the size of their military to 800,000. And now Rubio has agreed to cut off all limits on the size of Ukraine's military or their weapon systems. which is, that takes away, one of Russia's top three demands when they invaded Ukraine and immediately sought for peace with Ukraine. It was denazification, demilitarization, and neutrality for Ukraine. And the question, I think, even the question of NATO membership is now, that was the other big issue that is now taken out of the 19-point peace plan. Once 28-point peace plan, now it's 19. So the NATO membership is now up in the air. So it's not part of any deal. And now they're going to present that to Russia. And Russia, of course, is going to immediately reject that. And then everyone will blame Russia for refusing peace after Putin said, yeah, we like the Trump peace plan. Now they took out all the parts that were acceptable to Russia. And it's clear that from Trump's previous modus operandi, he's going to escalate the war and resume the sale of long-range strike missiles, air-launched cruise missiles fired from Ukrainian F-16s that are reportedly manned by former U.S. Air Force F-16 pilots to strike Russia, deep into Russia, perhaps even into Moscow Oblast. So this is terrible news that we learned today, unfortunately.
Today we've learned from Washington Post, one of the officials in Washington has informed them that Donald Trump is not that much involved in the process of preparing these sort of documents. It's somehow amazing who's doing this, David. You're looking at this administration. I don't see J.D. Vance being that much involved. And who's doing this? Marco Rubio is the Secretary of State, at the same time the National Security Advisor. And you mentioned Keith Kellogg, that he's getting, he's somehow, he wants to quit. But who else is participating, is preparing these documents, and who is deciding about, right now they put out 28 point, and as you mentioned, it's reduced to 19 point. So I think one of the main goals was, the size of the military of Ukraine, which was 600. Today I was talking with Paul Craig Roberts. He said that even 600,000 would be too much for Russian to accept. And you see all of a sudden they are removing these points. And who's behind this, in your opinion? And who's going to put pressure on Zelensky?
Well, the problem is the Trump administration is badly divided between the neocon wing of the administration, which is led by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, includes UN Ambassador Mike Waltz, John Ratcliffe, the director of CAA. There are reports that the Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman General Kane is also in the neocon bandwagon. And then on the America First side, or Steve Witkoff, who negotiated the 28-point peace plan with Russia, which was subsequently modified by the Ukrainian former defense minister, Ustinov or Yermov, I think. But then there's also, Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Defense, Vice President J.D. Vance, on the America First side, and others, just a few others. Dan Driscoll is Secretary of the Army. He doesn't have a lot of influence, but he was picked instead of Pete Hegseth or Tulsi Gabbard or the CIA director to go to Kyiv and tell Zelensky to accept the deal, and only to find out that just a day or two later, a couple days later, Zelensky, I think that happened on Wednesday, and then here we are on Monday, 5 days later, and Zelensky has gotten everything he wanted with this 19-point peace plan. So Witkoff wrote the initial plan, which was a true compromise agreement with Russia. It got modified, put some poison pills in there from Ukraine. Zelensky said he still wasn't going to accept the deal, even though he had input through his former defense minister in the terms of the agreement, and now basically Trump and Rubio have caved to everything Zelensky was asking for, and there's really nothing left in terms of a real peace proposal that Russia would even consider. This sounds even worse than the peace plan that was delivered by, was written by Keith Kellogg, who's an ardent neocon, as we mentioned, is reportedly decided to resign just mere hours after the peace proposal was released on Tuesday.
You're looking at the 28 points. In my opinion, the key components of this plan was, one of them was the territorial concessions by Ukrainians, limitation on its military, and relationship with NATO. I don't know if all of these points were removed from.
Yes, all three of those points are reportedly removed, according to the New York Post and other sources. So, yeah, basically everything Russia has demanded, really very consistently since, within the last year and a half, certainly, since their June 2024 proposal has been taken out of the agreement. So there's really nothing left for the Russians to consider. This peace proposal, it's really the Zelensky plan. Trump allowed Zelensky to change it to his liking, and now it's the Zelensky EU peace plan. Because the one thing that Trump has been very consistent on is he always caves and unilaterally surrenders to the neocons, the European EU heads who want perpetual war, and of course Zelensky, whose very dictatorship and continued rule in Ukraine is conditional upon continuation of the war.
You think that the Europeans, how do you see the role of Europeans in the whole situation? Because Europeans, whenever they're talking about, I don't know, Zelensky, what is the role of Zelensky right now in Ukraine without the help coming from European, the support that they're getting from the United Kingdom, for example, from Germany, mostly from the United Kingdom? And how does the President of the United States see Zelensky and his administration?
Well, I mean, we've had some indications as to how President Trump truly sees Zelensky, because during his February 28th meeting with Zelensky in the White House, they had a big argument, and it was very public. And then October 17th, he had a very profanity-laced meeting in which Trump was cussing out Zelensky incessantly and threw his map on the floor, and which was a map that Zelensky brought to try to underscore the importance of Western Donetsk to the defense of the Ukrainian state. And, so one would think that based on, and not only that, but President Trump, I think it was just yesterday, it was reported that, President Trump posted a Truth Social in which he said that Ukraine has been very ungrateful for, in its response to the peace proposal, which President Trump issued so generously. That is the most realistic peace proposal and probably the better terms that Ukraine could possibly get from Russia. And Zelensky just essentially gave Trump the middle finger and said, "Screw you! We're not gonna do what you want. We're gonna do it my way or the highway." And I have the backing of Starmer from the UK and Macron from France and Merz from Germany. And we're just going to gain up on you, and you claim to be a superpower, but you always cave to us. So you're going to do it our way.
The whole war in Ukraine is about NATO and the NATO expansion. And after 4 years of the war, you cannot put a point on in your document considering that Ukraine cannot be part of NATO anymore. They cannot be considered. How is that possible to negotiate with Russians? I don't know what's going on in the mind of the Marco Rubio, for example, when he goes and he accepts that.
Well, it's so funny because I just heard Rubio, I think it was earlier this morning, there was a quote that I saw posted on X in which he claimed to know nothing about any 28-point European counterproposal. Now, maybe that was from last night. But wow, news travels fast. I mean, they already Rubio already approved as of, again, just an hour or two ago in the New York Post and other news journals that, he already caved to Zelensky's terms after claiming to know nothing about them as recently as, I guess, last night. So, Rubio's all over the place. He's very inconsistent. He's just really the main problem. The main obstacle to peace has always been Rubio within the administration. He's the one who, the news reports indicate, killed the Budapest summit. He's the one who persuaded Trump to cancel that. He's just really a thorn in Trump's side. That's very America last, Ukraine first, Israel first, and he's ensuring that the Trump peace agenda, at least with regards to Ukraine, never is successful. And as a result, the world faces an increased threat of World War III that we've never faced as the U.S. Since the Cuban Missile Crisis. I think you're on mute.
Now, if you assume that the Trump administration trying to get along with Europeans or somehow accepting what Zelensky is talking about, is it possible for Ukraine to be? I don't know if Europe is able to let Ukraine into the European Union with the conditions they're in right now, because the economy is not working. Everything comes from other countries, from Europeans, from the United States, in terms of weapons, and their economy would collapse if the United States stopped sending them. What is the problem with the Trump administration? You mentioned Rubio, but after all, do you think that Donald Trump has some sort of leverage on Europeans after all? Do you feel that?
Trump has an amazing amount of leverage over Ukraine and the Europeans. If he threatened to join, to leave NATO tomorrow, EU leaders would be, just sign agree to whatever Trump said. Whatever peace deal, if it handed over, 50% of Ukraine, I think EU leaders would be like, well, we have to accept this, or else the U.S. will leave NATO, and then we'll be defenseless against, a Russian invasion. So, Trump. He bragged, 53 times. He bragged that he could end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. The truth is, he probably could have. Maybe not 24 hours, but probably 72 hours. 3 days of meetings with Putin, with either him or probably J.D. Vance, or even Tulsi Gabbard, for that matter. If she had plenipotentiary power to negotiate whatever terms she thought was best for the U.S., or simply, had feedback from Trump and Vance, they could have ended this destructive and unnecessary war within the first week of the Trump second term administration. And the crazy thing is, Trump continues to post on Truth Social about how this is a war that never would have started if he had been president, in 2022. And he's right. And yet he has embraced Biden's war as his own. He's enthusiastically escalating the war with, long-range missile shipments, as I mentioned, more massive sanctions than Biden had ever considered. So he's going, after claiming that Biden was, on the verge of starting World War III, he's doing the same thing. Now, at the same time, he's had this diplomatic offensive with Russia that is very refreshing for Biden. So he's, on one side, militarily, he's escalating, but the other side, he's trying to de-escalate. And the two policies just don't mesh, because the more Trump escalates the war, the more he, sends more missiles and more arms, and whether it's indirectly or directly to Ukraine, and the more he increases sanctions on Russia, the more Russian leaders are going to think this guy can't be trusted, because he claims to want peace, and yet he's escalating Biden's war. He clearly wants to destroy Russia as well. We shouldn't trust anything he says. And yet Russian President Putin has been very magnanimous and complimentary of all of Trump's diplomatic initiatives, trying to ignore the escalations to the maximum extent possible. And Trump keeps stabbing him in the back, in terms of, or maybe not stabbing him in the back, that's probably a poor choice of words, but, pulling the rug from any Russian and U.S. peace initiatives that are pre-agreed to. He did that with Anchorage. Putin, the Russians thought they had a deal with Trump, and he backed out of it. And now, again, Russia thought they had a deal with Trump, and then Trump modified it with those poison pills that I referred to, which I mentioned about the army troop size, being 600,000 men instead of probably 200,000 is what they probably agreed to before that. And then, of course, the Donbass region under the 28-point peace plan was supposed to be a neutral zone in terms of a demilitarized zone, in terms of the territory that Ukraine would give back to Russia. That was unacceptable to Russia. And then, of course, the $100 billion in reparations. Now, in the the European counterproposal that was up to 300 billion in reparations. And there's no, in this new deal, the 19-point peace plan, there's no limitations whatsoever on the size of Ukraine's army or the weapons that it can have. And as you mentioned, the number one issue for Russia, the reason they invaded is that Ukraine would become a permanently neutral country, as it was under its pre-2019 constitution, and never join NATO. And now Rubio has taken that out. So, Rubio has exposed himself more than ever before as the chief obstacle to peace on the U.S. side.
You remember in the aftermath of the meeting between Donald Trump and Pyne in Alaska, before the meeting, Donald Trump was talking about the ceasefire, an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine. Then he changed his mind. That after the meeting, he said that no ceasefire. We're going to find some sort of solution for a settlement in Ukraine. Then he went to the United Kingdom. He came back from the United. He changed totally his idea on the ceasefire. Do you think that Donald Trump is really that much? It seems that he's getting. How do you see the relationship between the United Kingdom and the United States? What sort of leverage or what sort of influence do they have on the Trump administration?
Well, they shouldn't have any influence on the Trump administration because until recently, the UK ambassador to the US had campaigned and worked to defeat Trump in the last election. And of course, Zelensky did as well. So Zelensky came and encouraged people to vote for Democrat senators during the 2022 election, essentially. I don't think he ever campaigned for Kamala Harris, but he was working to undermine the Republican Party and essentially hurt Trump, who he had reason to know at that point was going to run for re-election. So President Trump is, he just comes across as weak. The neocons claim that he shows weakness when he tries to compromise with Russia, but the greatest weakness he's ever shown is when he absolutely caves to Zelensky, who, as he rightly stated in February, is a dictator without elections. This is a man, an autocratic leader who kills his own people, imprisons his political opponents. 70,000, according to one of Ukraine's top rated journalists, 70,000 political prisoners that Zelensky has rounded up into their political prisons. He's fighting this war. He's stealing money like there's no tomorrow. I mean, the 100 million is just that's just the tip of the iceberg. My reports suggest it's about 1.5 billion that the Zelensky regime has embezzled from the U.S. and other foreign aid sources. So he's supporting a corrupt dictator who really is everything that people claim is true about Putin is even more true about Zelensky. Ukraine today is more of a totalitarian state than Russia. Russia is more free, and certainly, they're sending volunteers to fight the war in Ukraine, no conscripts, whereas Ukraine is kidnapping young men off the streets and sending them to fight on the front lines with 3 days of training and basically sending them to commit suicide. And that's why the war is so unpopular in Ukraine. It remains quite popular in Russia, but it's very unpopular in Ukraine. And I think 20% of Ukrainians want to keep fighting the war, and around 80% want peace. They're willing to give land for peace. And their support for Zelensky has plummeted to, I think, around 9 or as much as 16%.
What else can they do for Ukraine, in your opinion? As you mentioned, it doesn't seem that the war would end anytime soon. But what else can they do for Ukraine? Are they going to send long-range missiles to Ukraine?
Well, yeah. So it was reported earlier, I think late this summer, that Trump had authorized the sale of 3,550 ERAM air-launched cruise missiles to Ukraine. Again, those would be fired from F-16 aircraft. There might be other. I think the only other aircraft that could fire them would be the Su-24 attack aircraft that I think Ukraine maybe has a handful, probably a couple dozen of those left that haven't been destroyed yet. A maximum of 100 aircraft, probably closer to 50 that could fire those missiles deep inside Russia. They have ranges of around 250 miles, so they could reach Moscow Oblast, but not Moscow City. And one of the interesting things about the 28-point peace plan that I pointed out in my latest Real War news article is that Trump said that if Ukraine fired missiles at Moscow or St. Petersburg, then we would withdraw our security guarantee of them, but implied that if Ukraine launched missiles at any other Russian target, cities, civilians, military targets, and then Russia invaded as a response, then we would potentially declare war on Russia. So that's one of the key problems with his initial peace plan. This 19-point peace plan is much more ridiculous than that.
David, do you think that Europe is on the path of being militarized? And because their economy is not doing great right now, they're talking about militarization of Europe, increasing the number of soldiers, the weapons they have, modernizing, producing more weapons. How do you see Europe as the war in Ukraine is continuing?
Well, I mean, European leaders understand that they have no ability to match Russia. I mean, Russia spends more on its military than all 30 European NATO member states combined by purchase power parity. They can outproduce, all of NATO combined in terms of heavy artillery munitions by about 4 times, and many other areas. I mean, the U.S. doesn't even build it. We haven't built a new tank from scratch, I think, since 1989. In terms of N1 tanks or other large armored vehicles or tank-like vehicles, Russia produces anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500. So you're right. European leaders are trying to, remilitarize, I guess, rebuild their industries. Russia is, they're both Russia and China are producing. They've already implemented a wartime economy, a mass-producing weapon systems at a rate we haven't seen since the Cold War, in the Soviet Union in particular. This is all for nothing because Russia is a threat of our own making. If we hadn't expanded NATO to include Ukraine as a de facto member state, and certainly in the Baltics, we would have peace with Russia and there'd be no conventional or nuclear threat from Russia. And we could partner with Russia economically and perhaps even in security measures, as Putin, of course, mentioned during his interview, I think it was last year in February with Tucker Carlson in Moscow, that he actually asked to join NATO. He said, could Russia join NATO I think he said Bill Clinton. I happen to know he also said the same thing to Bush in 2002. So, 2 times President Putin made clear that Russia was interested in considering NATO membership as an ally of the United States. And, Ukraine could have joined NATO at the same time, and Russia would have been fine with that, and Ukraine would have had 100% of its territory. Every opportunity that Russia has offered, including with the Istanbul Agreement, which they offered to withdraw all Russian troops from pre-war Ukrainian territory as part of the March-April 2022 deal, have been rejected by the West and by Volodymyr Zelensky. So, Russia remains committed to peace much more than any other country. Trump is sometimes committed to peace, and sometimes he pivots back to supporting war. He's proven an untrustworthy partner. And this is not what I wanted to say during this interview. I wanted to praise President Trump for and I do for the 28-point peace plan. But if in fact he comes out in support of this 19-point peace plan, he will be just as bad of a warmonger as Marco Rubio.
David, you mentioned that Zelensky and the British ambassador in the United States, they tried to help the rivals of Donald Trump during the election. Let's go beyond that. Let's talk about Lindsey Graham. And these people, when Donald Trump was in a bad position, aftermath of January 6th and what has happened during those days, those people who were trying to do, even Russiagate, you remember the Russiagate, we had Rand Paul, supporting him. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene supporting him. These are members that they have supported him without considering, without, you know, asking Donald Trump any favor. But Donald Trump, he's going against all of these people and getting closer to Lindsey Graham. Don't you think that is something strange going on with Donald Trump himself? Because you
Yeah.
have to go ahead.
Yeah, President Trump is, he's essentially proven with his latest antics of, praising who he refers to Communist Mandani, the New York City mayor-elect, in the White House, saying what a good mayor he's going to be. He'll be a great mayor, and then at the same time calling Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of his top partisans in the House of Representatives, a traitor, because she doesn't support Israel and she doesn't support, she supported the release of the Epstein files, essentially forced Trump's hand, along with Thomas Massie and Anna Paulina Luna and Nancy Mason in the House of Representatives here in the U.S. to do a 180 and support the release of the Epstein files, which Trump believes, rightly or wrongly, will be damaging to his presidency, probably rightly, if they're fully released. Unredacted. This is really, crazy behavior. But what he's essentially done is he's proven that MAGA is not an ideology. We thought that Make America Great Again was America first, but no, it's not America first. It's Trump first. And, it's whatever. And if Trump changes his principles or his allegiances to the Democrats, to a Marxist socialist mayor in New York City that's Muslim, happens to be Muslim, or someone like Lindsey Graham, who's praises Trump but tries to oppose all his peace policies. And while he condemns Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene as traitors when they've been America first long before Trump. Well, in the case of Massie, before Trump was. Marjorie Taylor Greene, of course, didn't join the House until 2020. And credited Trump for her conversion to her America First political stance. This is really, it sends a message to Republicans in Congress that just like with Putin, that Trump cannot be trusted. He will turn on a dime against all his party loyalists, and it's very demoralizing. And unfortunately, that as I'm a Republican, I'm a lifelong Republican, and I've always supported Republicans with very few exceptions. In terms of my votes, and it sends a message along with the 2025 November elections in Virginia and New Jersey, and the gubernatorial elections, that the Republicans are on track to losing about 40 House seats. And I just read that Republican retirements are about to surge. So Marjorie Taylor Greene wasn't an liar. She's just one of the first ones to declare that she's going to retire. And unfortunately, when that happens, it increases the blue wave margin even further, as we saw in 2006. We saw the same thing happen where Republicans controlled the House for 12 years, and then everyone knew that the House was going to be lost, and maybe in 2018 as well, and the Democrats took over. So this is very grim from a Republican standpoint.
How do you see the MAGA movement? The MAGA movement particularly in the aftermath of the assassination of Charlie Kirk, you see some sort of division, some sort of fracture happening within the MAGA. And you mentioned Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massie. These people are not, they were part of MAGA, but right now they say that what the Trump administration is doing is not the way that we wanted them to do, and on the other hand, you see the people who were not part of MAGA is running the administration. You mentioned Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio was never MAGA,
Yeah.
And how do you see the movement? Because after all, I literally feel that J.D. Vance would be one of the main candidates for 2028. How do you see the MAGA movement and the support that they can give for someone like J.D. Vance? Or they're going to shift it? They're going to destroy it from within? I don't know what would happen then.
Well, I think the future of the MAGA movement, and I guess I don't like using MAGA anymore because MAGA is basically Trump first. The future of the America First conservative movement, on one level, is bright because JD Vance he's just kicking Marco Rubio's butt in the polls. You know, he's like 43%, and Rubio's I think at 3%. I mean, Rubio is repeatedly stated that he's indicated he's probably not going to run for president. I think he would want to, be J.D. Vance's vice president. And that's an interesting dynamic because, of course, Vance is much younger than Rubio is. But that's much more realistic because Rubio really doesn't have a chance, short of Trump's endorsement. If Trump were to go out and endorse Rubio, then he could be a contender. I think Rubio would still lose to Vance. But so that's very bright because J.D. Vance is, he's been pro-peace. He was the leader of the opposition to Biden's war in Ukraine during his time in the Senate, prior to him being selected as Trump's vice presidential running mate. So it's very bright on that end. The problem is that Trump is setting up Vance for defeat. Everyone knows Vance is going to be the front runner. He's going to run as the Republican presidential standard bearer in 2028. But if, we're still 3 years out, and if Trump keeps up these America Last policies, especially in foreign policy, I mean, that's a key issue for America First, is to bring American troops home, to stop fighting these endless wars, provoking endless wars. I mean, I think, America First conservatives could give Trump a pass if he decides to go against Venezuela and conduct strikes or, try to use the military against Maduro, because that's kind of been our historic thing, rightly or wrongly. I think I have divided, I'm divided on whether that would be justified, but I think it would be far more justified to move against a Marxist dictator in Venezuela and liberate the people there and then pull all our troops out than it is to try to risk a nuclear war with Russia over Ukraine or nuclear war with China over Taiwan. So, I think Trump needs to reject. I think he needs to come out strong against Rubio's 19-point peace plan. I would love to see him. Probably there's nothing better he could do than fire Rubio as Secretary of State or force him to resign. Certainly as interim national security advisor. I mean, the idea of having Rubio take both those roles is ridiculous. There's no way that one man, those are both two full-time jobs. So he's basically telling Rubio to, work two part-time jobs at the same time. And we've seen from the last 6 months, U.S. foreign policy has gone in a very bad direction under Rubio's control.
Can you imagine? He's both Anthony Blinken and Jake Sullivan. That's unbelievable. Two important positions. Yeah, and he's not talking that much, David. He's not that much vocal about his policies. He's just doing behind the scenes something, and he's not that much. That's why we don't know what he's thinking of and what he's gonna do. Like as you mentioned with this 19-point plan, he went to Europe, to Geneva, talking with Europeans and Ukrainians, and modifying the whole document and getting back. And it's so strange. It's all so strange. I think I would assume, if I put myself in the shoes of Russians right now, they're going to be so much confused what's going on with the Trump administration.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So I've given 4 other news interviews in the last 24 plus hours with other podcasters like yourself, and all of those were pretty upbeat, kind of praising Trump, saying this 28 peace plan is our best chance for peace. And then it all, and then we find out that Trump's already, Rubio flushed it down the drain, and presumably with Trump's support, because I don't think Rubio would make that kind of decision to completely eviscerate Trump's 28-point peace plan without Trump's approval. So, Trump especially appears to have a brain transplant. Maybe he was taken over by alien body snatchers, I guess, in the last 24 hours, because that's what it appears like. And this is why there's so much confusion in as you mentioned in Russia, because the Russians. I guess they're fairly naive. The Putin and other leaders, naive, I guess, in a good way, in that they believe that Trump is sincere, and I think he is sincere. But he's as he's gotten older, this is one of the reasons why the U.S. should have a ban on presidents serving past age 75, is because as Trump gets ready to turn 80 next year, June 14th, he's nothing like Biden. Biden was the absolute worst. He was brain dead. He was physically incompetent. Trump is very savvy. He's media savvy. If he has dementia, it's very, very slight. He's quick on his feet, but he is prone to these massive foreign policy 180s. He condemned Mitt Romney as a flip-flopper. He is the biggest flip-flopper in U.S. political history, and it's very unfortunate because his gut is always to go in the right direction, to be pro-peace, and he. As I warned back in November on my Real War Substack, by hiring these neocons to be his foreign policy, top advisors, he is reportedly known to do whatever the last person, basically parrot whatever the last person talked to him said. And in the case of Zelensky, it was, we're just going to follow Zelensky peace plan on October 17th, and now it's Marco Rubio, I guess. Tells him that we have to have Ukraine and EU support, or else the peace plan won't work. When in fact the only country that he needs to have approval with is the Russian Federation, because the U.S., as we discussed, has the ability to force the EU leaders and Zelensky to accept whatever, within limits, pretty much anything that the U.S. and Russia agreed to.
David, I really believe that the Israeli lobby is so much powerful, but right now with the case of Ukraine, it seems that Ukraine is much more powerful. The lobby they have in the United States is unbelievable, the way that they're capable of doing this.
Well, I think the Israeli lobby is actually much more powerful than Ukraine's. And the crazy thing is, Trump was, he stuck to his guns. And even though Netanyahu has been violating the ceasefire, he hasn't resumed major military operations in terms of, annihilating the Gazan people any further since the ceasefire was implemented. And yet in terms of Zelensky, Ukraine is probably the second most powerful lobby in the United States from a foreign perspective. And yet, Zelensky and the EU combined are able to dictate U.S. foreign policy. We're supposed to be a superpower, and Ukraine is supposed to be a puny military protectorate with only 28.7 million people, which is, probably 8 or 9% of the population of the United States. And yet, Zelensky is the one giving Trump his marching orders. So. It's very discouraging as an American to see the U.S. humiliated to this level. It's just very embarrassing.
David, we've learned today from the Iranian ambassador to Russia. He's talking about that Russia has proposed a plan, a defense plan, the defense pact. Iran, Russia, and these countries who are somehow feeling that NATO may attack them, they're getting together. Do you think that after all, we're getting these countries going to come together and make some sort of alliance, or they're shaping it without talking about it?
Well, they are formal allies. So Iran, of course, has been a member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization since 2022. India and Pakistan are part of that alliance as well. Obviously, India and China had some border clashes as recently as 2020, but then that same year they had a border kind of peace agreement. And they've held that peace in the last 5 years. The Prime Minister Modi of India has traveled to meet with Xi Jinping. He attended the SCO meeting in Beijing. Beijing had a massive military parade. Putin was there, and all their allies were there as well. North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un was there, and I think the president of Iran was there as well. So I think it's a mistake for us to not realize that. However long it's been since they've been allies, North Korea, Iran, China, and Russia are very close military allies today. And their alliance together forms a much more powerful alliance that overmatches the Western U.S.-led alliance in terms of NATO and Japan and our other allies, both in terms of nuclear weapons, by far, military power, China, of course, has the largest army, the largest navy, the largest air force, the largest coast guard, the largest nuclear-capable ballistic missile force. And they also have a defense industrial base that's likely 5 to 6 times larger than the U.S. itself. And Russia has a very large defense industrial base as well that is not quite as large as the United States, but is increasingly getting to the point where it can begin to rival us as a near-peer competitor on that level. So the U.S. is facing an existential threat from the Sino-Russian alliance, and you know. The irony is, it's our the neoliberals believe that it's our allies, you know, like Montenegro and North Macedonia, that make us more powerful and you know, make the Russians fear us. You know, it's the exact opposite in terms of making us more secure. The U.S. would do far better, you know, and I'm not advocating this, to dump all of our allies in the West and get better relations with Russia and China. We would be far more secure by having much better relations with Beijing and Moscow than if we were to do Zelensky's and the EU's bidding in the case of this 19-point peace plan. So that should be the focus. I know that Trump, in his heart of hearts, he wants to have a geostrategic partnership with Russia that would entail massive economic cooperation, perhaps technological cooperation. That was essentially enshrined in one of the 28 points in his original peace plan that was released just less than a week ago. And it sounds like that's probably been taken out of the latest peace plan, which appears to be handwritten by Volodymyr Zelensky.
You know what's so amazing, that we've learned from the head of parliament in Iran. He said that during the war between Iran and Israel, on the 6th day of war, the person in the administration who called them was J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance was calling Iranian to find a solution for the war. It wasn't Marco Rubio. That shows how divided, in my opinion, is the administration.
Yeah, you know, there's a great irony in that if Trump had picked Rubio to be vice president and given him the same role that he's given Vance, and if he had chosen Vance to be a Secretary of State and interim national security advisor, you know, none of these mistakes would be happening, because Vance would be in large-scale control of U.S. foreign policy. We would have a peace deal with Russia. You know, Vance wouldn't have cared about what Ukraine and the EU had to say. You know, we would be certain to avoid war with Taiwan if Trump had followed Vance's advice, and just all these unforced errors. You know, we would have a lasting peace with Iran. Right now, it seems pretty tenuous because we've had rumors that I think it was just on June 28th. It was about 6 days after Trump bombed Iran that he said, you know, after claiming that falsely that we destroyed Iran's nuclear program, he said, well, we might need to bomb Iran again if they try to reconstitute it. So, you know, implying it wasn't set back by years. It might have been set back by 3 months, but certainly wasn't by years.
Yeah, it seems to me, after all, you know, you mentioned if J.D. Vance was the Secretary of State, but, you know, it's Tucker Carlson and the people who were close to Donald Trump and the administration in those days before picking up these people as part of, you know, the Secretary of State. They were taught their main objective, their main point was that if Rubio is the vice president of the United States, they can assassinate Donald Trump and put Marco Rubio in his position. This was one of the main concerns on the part of these people like Tucker Carlson. And that's why they have pushed for J.D. Vance to be the vice president of the United States and Rubio. And there is a lot going on with the administration.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. I thought the same thing. J.D. Vance is more of a principled, pro-peace conservative, American conservative than Trump ever was. And so, you know, that's what they hate Trump most about, is that he ran in 2016 on a platform of peace with Russia, and they'd already demonized Russia as some kind of boogeyman in the fake Trump-Russia collusion hoax. So the Democrats had boxed themselves in a corner, knowing that Russia wasn't, you know, an enemy that wanted to destroy the U.S. or wanted war with the U.S. They painted Putin that way anyway, falsely, and so they tried to take down President Trump's candidacy and his presidency, and they succeeded in preventing Trump from establishing a lasting peace with Russia during his first term, like he originally planned. And then Trump started out really strong with his first 3.5 months of his second term, pursuing peace with Russia full bore, and since then the neocons and the neoliberals have gotten the upper hand, and I suspect that the Democrats are going to be very, very supportive of this new 19-point peace plan, and all the people that hate Trump are going to be praising him for doing what they want to do.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I really feel the same way. Thank you so much, David, for being with us today. It was a great pleasure to talk to you again.
Thanks, Neem. It was a great pleasure to talk with you as well.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
See you soon.